What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another Drums and Drams whiskey review. My name is Cameron, and today I am really freaking excited and a little bit nervous as well to be taking a look at this brand new Hidden Barn Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, batch number 1. All right, so I got my butt out of bed bright and early this morning and got on the road from Columbus, Ohio, down to the gift shop of the Neeley family distillery to stand in line and pick up my Limit 2 bottle allotment of this Hidden Barn batch number 1. Now, if you're a whiskey enthusiast out there, you probably already know the significance of this bottle and kind of understand why it's generating some hype right now. But for those of you who are a little bit less familiar, I did want to give you a little context or some background info at the beginning of this video. I'm also going to be doing a bottle breakdown so I can list off the stats of this release. So what I'm trying to say is that there's going to be a fair bit of talking here at the beginning. I'm going to keep it as short as I possibly can. But if you do want to skip ahead to the review portion only, you can always do that by checking out the timestamps in the description of this video. And last thing, while I have your attention, please go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps out the channel. All right, so the first thing that I wanted to talk about is just the significance of Hidden Barn and this first release. So all we need to do is rewind about a month or so to the middle of June 2022, when Jackie Zykan announced that she was going to be leaving Old Forester as their master taster effective on July 1st. Now, in that announcement, she kind of hinted at some upcoming projects, but she couldn't talk about it until everything with Old Forester was, completely wrapped up. So after July 1st, we started to see some things being teased out there, some press releases, an Instagram page being created for Hidden Barn, and eventually a formal press release came out letting us know that we should be expecting the release of this first batch, this very small 7-barrel batch in 4 markets across the US, California, Florida, Kentucky, and Colorado. Obviously, as well, the gift shop at the Neeley family distillery. This is significant because it's the very first project to come from Jackie Zykan since she's leaving Old Forester, and it's a small project. I mean, she's working with a craft distillery on this new brand. It's exciting. It's something that she's going to have a lot of control over, the way that this gets blended and bottled. So I think, speaking on behalf of a lot of whiskey nerds right now, we are all very excited to see what happens with this first release and also the brand as a whole moving forward and hopefully, as they increase production and increase distribution. A couple of quick facts here about the liquid inside these bottles. We are, like I said, going to do a bottle breakdown, but we have a 110 entry proof. So a nice low entry proof. A lot of people say that this provides kind of a more flavorful and fuller drinking experience in the final product. This is double pot distilled. All right, so we're talking pot distillation, not column distillation. As I mentioned, it is a very small 7-barrel batch, so all really good things. And also it is non-chill filtered. Last thing before we talk whiskey stats, I want to read you something here from the press release, which kind of details the name Hidden Barn, why they've called the brand Hidden Barn. So here we go. Black barns are a hallmark of the rolling hills and hollers of Kentucky. At a time when distilling was a punishable offense, the black stained barns, caused by a naturally occurring microflora that feeds on airborne alcohol, were a dead giveaway to anyone looking to bust up an illegal distilling operation. In a sign of solidarity and community, Kentuckians would paint all barns black to make the still barns indistinguishable from the others. All right, so a pretty cool backstory. You can see on the top of the bottle here, we have the little kind of outline black barn logo, which is awesome. So I dig it. I dig the bottle design. It's beautiful. The back of the bottle has some really cool text on it. The colors are great. So check mark for everything so far. Let's go ahead and check out now this bottle in the bottle breakdown. All right, bottle breakdown for Hidden Barn batch number 1. First and foremost, the age of this product is between 4 and 5 years old. It is bottled at 106 proof, which is batch proof, or 53% ABV. The mash bill is 70% corn, 20% rye, and 10% malted barley, coming to us from the Neeley family distillery. The SRP on this bottle is $75, and the secondary value is between $150 and $170 on the first day of it being released. I think the last thing that I should say here, which I don't know if I've mentioned already, so I'll just say it again, is that this was a collaboration not only between Jackie Zykan and the Neeley family distillery, but also the 5280 Whiskey Society, which is based out of Colorado. So a really great collaborative effort between all those people. Let's go ahead and check this thing out on the nose and see what we get. Whew, so this is a spicy whiskey right off the bat. Tons of like this Mexican chocolate, you know, that kind of cinnamon, spicy chocolate note. There is some malted milk ball here, a little bit of spearmint, a ton of nice oak spice. It's a dark whiskey. It's a spicy whiskey, and it's not for the faint of heart. Let me just say that. It does not smell like 106 proof. It's got a little kick to it. Yeah, there is sort of a dry purple fruit note in here. You could call it dry figs, you know, whatever you want to say. There is kind of this dark, dry fruit note going on. Don't know if I've said this already, but definitely some chili pepper spice in there, along with that cinnamon spice. And that Mexican chocolate note, I'm telling you guys, that is really standing out to me. This nice, full chocolate, dark, sweet quality, but also with that kind of hefty cinnamon that stings your nostrils just a little bit. Yeah, the oak in here is nice and balanced. You get a slight drying quality of that oak. You get a little bit of a spicy oak as well. And there's also a fair bit of that, you know, that slightly funky oak that shows some age. So for a 4 to 5 year old whiskey to have this kind of an oak presence and also a hint of leather in there as well to kind of round that out, it's really nice and kind of unexpected. Yeah, and there's one note in here that I absolutely love, and that is like a rich espresso note. I love whiskeys that have that dark chocolate or coffee or espresso. You're getting that nice kind of espresso, little bit of a bitterness in there, but it's flavorful and dark. It's really a nice foundational note in this whiskey. Kind of reminds me of some other craft whiskeys that I've had, particularly ones that use pot stills, just like this one. So let's go ahead and check this thing out on the palate now. But the nose is very, very good. Here we go. Cheers. That is a spicy freaking whiskey, and it is delicious. I will say this at the beginning of kind of tasting this thing, is that if you're unfamiliar with kind of a craft whiskey profile, and I know that's such a general thing to say, in this case what I mean is like you're kind of tasting some, I don't want to say raw grain notes, but there's a different grain quality here. It tastes, God, this is horrible. It tastes more craft, right? It's a little funkier of a grain note. And if you ever had like Driftless Glen or like the High Plains Rye, there are some other things, maybe like the Cream of Kentucky Bottled in Bond Rye that was kind of, you know, a recent release. This is not quite as funky as some of those others, but it does have some of that funkier grain quality in there. And so I think some people that are gonna smell and taste this right off the bat are gonna go, what is going on here? Don't freak out about it. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more as we go in this video, but I want to get back to tasting this thing. But I just want to point out that this does have that kind of bespoke craft distillery quality here on the nose and on the palate. It's a great drinking experience. Really full-bodied and rich for that 106 proof. I think it is like at that perfect point of drinkability. I would say if I had one complaint, which is not that big of a complaint, it's that it's a little spiky on the front end. I don't know why I pronounced that so emphatically. It's a little spiky on the front end, and in the mid palate, it drops off just a little bit too much for me, maybe like 10-15%. But as it goes into the finish, that is where this whiskey shines crazily. I mean, this is a fantastic finish for a whiskey, not only in terms of the length of the finish, but it's so flavorful. It's not just spice. It's not just that chili pepper and that cinnamon, that kind of Mexican chocolate spearmint thing that I've been talking about. But there's so much of that dry, dark fruit and that coffee that hang around on the palate. That's what really makes the finish of this whiskey special. And I would say, like, hands down, this is one of my favorite finishes on a whiskey that I've had recently, you know, in the middle part of 2022 right now. I think it's fantastic. It does have some flaws here and there, But this is batch 1. We're talking 4 to 5 year craft whiskey. And I think keeping all of that context in mind as I kind of review this right now is definitely definitely important as I go. So let's nose and taste this a little bit more before we kind of wrap this thing up. Yeah, I'm also getting maybe just a little bit of a burnt orange on the nose as well. That's something that's becoming a little bit more obvious as I've nosed and tasted it and kind of acclimated myself to it a little bit more. Yeah, and maybe also just a little bit of a lemon peel in there too. And I think what I'm getting at here with some of these citrus notes that are starting to come into focus, along with, of course, what I've talked about as a very spicy whiskey, is that there's just a lot of active rye influence in here. The mash bill, as I mentioned, 70% corn, 20% rye, 10 malted barley. Like 20% rye is not a small amount of rye, okay, for a bourbon. I mean, we're in high rye bourbon territory at that point, and I think that's really coming off here. You're getting a lot of those quintessential rye notes, but it's not overpowering the whiskey. It's just making it a very intense experience, even at 106 proof. So let's do one final sip here, and then we can wrap this thing up. Cheers. A little bit of a cherry note is starting to come into focus now on that third sip. But through and through, I love the way that the spice notes and the oak influence work together with some of these darker fruit notes and also that darker kind of espresso note. I just love the way all of it is kind of wrapped up in a package that really, really works. So in that regard, I can't say whether or not, that's all the blending, like that's all Jackie, because I've never tasted the single barrels from this distillery. So I don't know exactly what those taste like, the different qualities that they have. But either way, whether it's the barrel quality, the blending, the distillation, the combination of the three, which I'm sure it is, I've got to say hats off on this first release, because I think it's just tasty stuff. And I was thinking about giving away this sealed bottle on one of my live streams, but I might have to hold on to it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it just yet. I'm a fan. I think this is fantastic stuff. So let's go ahead and head on over and get my final thoughts on this release. The first thing that I want to do is quickly revisit something that I was talking about a few minutes ago, which is this idea of a craft whiskey profile. And it's just a hope that I have for the whiskey industry and the whiskey market as a whole because of this release. And that is that I hope this Hidden Barn is going to be a way to make that craft whiskey profile I talked about a little bit more mainstream. So distilleries that are using like heirloom grains and pot distillation and all this kind of stuff, they tend to have, again, this funky kind of quality. And it's something that I think a lot of people immediately write off when they taste it, because it doesn't align with their traditional idea of a Kentucky straight bourbon or of something sourced from MGP, a 95.5 rye, whatever the case may be. These craft whiskeys that have these just different qualities to them, I mean, that's the best way to put it. I think they just don't get their due. And I see this not only from consumers, but from reviewers and whiskey tubers and a lot of people. In particular, stuff like, High Plains Rye, 291 Distillery releases that Cream of Kentucky bottled and bond rye, which was definitely had some grain funkiness on there. Like, these are things that are good in their own way. And I hope by having Jackie associated with this and leading the charge on the blending of Hidden Barn, that it's going to help push this kind of a profile into the mainstream a little bit more. I think what's great here is that this is not 100% funky, weird craft whiskey on the palate. It's like 25, 35, 50% of that. And the rest of it is also really approachable for people who maybe aren't fans of that kind of a thing. So what I'm saying, I don't know if it's selfishly or just kind of, something that I believe in the world of whiskey, is just that I hope this enables more people to start to appreciate a craft whiskey profile, especially those different grains in that pot distillation, and kind of venture away from those Kentucky straight bourbon whiskeys that honestly, in large part, are starting to decrease in quality because of the whiskey boom that's happening right now. We're seeing lower quality special releases from some serious mainstay distilleries. So to bring someone from one of those mainstay distilleries and to start pushing products like this with excellent blending and excellent quality, that is exciting, and I hope it starts to kind of fundamentally shift the landscape of whiskey right now because we have so many craft distilleries doing stuff at such a high level. Let's talk very quickly about kind of the bullet points I like to do here in my final thoughts section. So first and foremost, who is gonna like this whiskey? Well, I've kind of said it. If you like craft whiskey and pot distillation, if you liked High Plains Rye, if you like stuff from Driftless Glen, smaller craft whiskey distilleries, if you want a dark and spicy profile, this is absolutely gonna be for you. Who is not gonna like this whiskey? You know, if you wanna stick to a clean, down the middle profile, a typical Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, yeah, this might not be for you, but I still think you should pick one up. Value on this whiskey at $75 SRP. I think it's a fair value. Not good, not bad. I think 75 is right in line for similar products from other craft distilleries at this age, being bottled at batch proof, and of course, having someone like Jackie Zykan blending it. 75 is fair. At the time that I'm recording this video, secondary is between 150 and 170 on day one of the release. I don't think, you know, it's not worth that. Not that it's a bad whiskey, but we're not in that premium price territory, at least in my mind for this. So I would avoid paying secondary. Pick it up maybe up to 85, 90 bucks if you see it in your area. But can I recommend this whiskey? Absolutely. I can wholeheartedly recommend this whiskey. If you see one, pick it up. I'll be curious to know what you think, so drop me a comment below if you get the opportunity to try this. That's gonna do it for this video. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell notification and all notifications to find out when I'm going live and when I'm dropping new content. If you wanna help support Drums and Drams, the best way you can do it is by checking out the Drums and Drams Patreon. I'm offering some, different content over there, some behind the scenes stuff, really trying to build a community. So check that out. It's $5 or $10 a month. It's not a big investment and it really does help the channel so much. But that's all I've got. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Cheers, and I'll see you next time here on Drums and Drams.